The manhwa starts, and our main protagonist was spewing about how life is hard and painful. Our scene swoops, and we see a building with no visible exits anywhere around. Inside, though, was a sight of terror and misery. Thick red blood covered all the walls. The horrors and cries of people echoed all around the walls, and as we get closer, everyone was crying out loud and begging to be freed from the hell. Mutilated flesh lay all around the place in conditions that were undesirable. Souls who lost their lives without much fight, and their blood colored the floor. Their bodies were all spread around the place, and it was clear that they didn't even have the chance to fight back. Just one glance introduces us to the desperation of a few people who were living and breathing in a man-made hell. A woman wearing traditional samurai armor was dashing. It seemed like she was ready to attack, but she was actually running for her life. In the next second, her arm completely gets torn. Her comrade immediately steps in to help, but he fails to do anything as well, and a big tentacle cuts him in the most brutal way. This goes on, and everyone who dared to step in was killed in the most unexplainable way ever. Our main protagonist shouts at the top of his lungs and cries to everyone not to rush and not to get separated. It seems like his cries were not heard, and he calls out to Maytal, his comrade. She casts an icy spell and immobilizes the monster's feet. This was taking a lot of mana from her, and she lets everyone know that they must attack the monster fast. Two men launch themselves at the monster with all the spells that they could chant, and immediately they cut the monster's arms. It spurts greenish blood and screams from the pain. All the remaining players began to circle the monster and began striking him one by one, but our main protagonist shouts at everyone not to rush in. But it was already too late. The monster immediately regenerates its arms, and in the next second, he brings out his tentacles and slices everyone present there. As their heads floated and their bodies danced in the air, their blood covered the entire space, and a circus of blood took place. As all the remaining strong players hesitated, they knew that they would die if they tried to attack the beast. Hayek readies himself and tells everyone that he would start the assault now, and he dashes toward the monster with his sword. He easily deflected the tentacles since they were in his zone. Hayek had earlier perfectly analyzed everything about the ability of the monster, and this made it easier for him to understand the nature of its attack. He uses his skill and perfectly dodges every attack with ease and closes his distance with the monster. But the monster realizes that his life is in danger, and he casts another spell. But this time, a yellow energy emerges from its third eye and it fires it. The shockwave literally shakes the place, but Hayek knew that a dying monster almost always has a final attack. He jumps over the attack as he made his way closer to its nape. He casts a lightweight spell on his sword and cuts that lump of flesh in half. This was the introduction to our powerful Hayek, who could use his brain to fight rather than his powers to dominate. All the remaining stupid players praised his excellent fight, and he unsheathed his sword. He commands everyone that they must take care of the souls, heal the players, and leave before the respawn. He points out that due to the miscalculation and stupid mindset, they lost almost half of their group, and one of the men from the group praises his skills. Hayek pays no mind to this, and as he was about to leave, he hears a rather uncommon sound and his back began to feel warm. He glances back and sees a sword lodged inside near his spine, and immediately two of his closest friends rushed toward him. A piece of trash laughed, and thanked Hayek for dragging all of them to the high levels, and he grabs his head in the next second. As he draws his own sword, he calls out to that traitor and lets him know that he would now kill him in the most brutal way ever. But the man who praised him earlier steps in and cuts his hand off cleanly. As he screamed from the pain, two men from the back also stab him, and blood began to overflow. He cries out and asks why they would do something like this, and as always, the greed and ambition of man always kills humanity. They tell him that they would create their own group and share his powers among themselves and grow stronger. He reminds those trash that even if they get the power, they have zero ability to fight or work in a team, and they would die as soon as they leave this area. These words were sharp, and the bullies knew that he was right, and with an angry tone, they remind him that he should worry about himself. From the back, two men tell the new leader that they have killed his loyal friends as well, and when he glances to his side, he sees them laying on the floor, and they both were stabbed in the back. This was just a turning point for him, and blood covered his eyes. The puny new leader began his useless philosophy and yapping. The guy from earlier who backstabbed Hayek first yapped about how it was his dream to become a baseball player and reflects on how long it has been since he last hit a home run. As he readied himself for the impact, Hayek was just done, and he began to mutter to himself that he killed so many, suffered so much, just to make it this far, and cried on how some weak, half-assed men can't take this from him. As that man swung, Hayek jumps over to him, and in the next second, he bites his throat using his teeth and severs his windpipe completely. He quickly rips his flesh, and blood gushes out from it. The trash leader screams to everyone to attack him immediately before he could use his skill. As he said this, Hayek was already cutting down men like butter, and every strike of his severed a part of a human body. As another sword lodges near his lungs, he tries to swing at him, but by this time he was already messy and missed his last shot. Another guy cuts his remaining arm, and the leader uses his skill and attacks his neck. The sharp blade easily cuts it, and Hayek's eyes open wide as he realizes that he is no longer able to feel his legs. His head drops with bounces, and he sees ahead of him, and the leader was complaining on how pests like Hayek tend to give them a hard time despite dying. As they point out the damage they suffered, they began to fear if they would really balance themselves out. They began their argument, and Hayek just lost his life to the people he cared for a little, and everything that he built got crushed. The survivors knew as well that Hayek was the best they had, but as they disregarded their mistake, they had no other option but to move on with his soul. As he closed his eyes, he begged to finally die, but his life is an episode of torture and misery. He opens his eyes, and he immediately breathes in and out. He realizes that something has happened to him, and that we learn that Hayek is a regressor and has been circling in this hell for years and years. This is nothing short of suffering made only for him. He screams from frustration, and Hayek does not have the gift of death. To some, it is a blessing to get back to square one, but in reality, this is a curse for him to see his comrades and loved ones dying over and over again, and only he would remain. He screams and shouts at his luck and promises himself to kill all the trash that betrayed him. He finally calms down and reminds himself that he could do nothing in this condition. He shares that everything in the world tends to get dull, and just like that, his life is dull as well. He has been looping for ages, and every time he dies he starts at zero. He got so angry that he punches the thick wall, and the pain made him realize that he is back to normal again. He grunts from the pains and swears again and again. It has been a while since he came here, and as he calmed down, he began to circle around the room. He touched the wall, and it seems like he was looking for a secret wall or something, and he finally gets closer to it. He presses it and swears to himself that he would kill the trash who made the switch to open the door at such a terrible place. A pathway opens. This was just level 1, and he shares that he died here countless times. At first, he starved for months, and each time he would just accept the fact that he would die, and just like that, he was then placed in with other players, which was 100 times more disgusting. Once they realized they all were trapped, people began to feast on whatever they found, and in most of the cases, people themselves became beasts and monsters. During the level 1 phase, no one really has any powers, and in this way, he died again and again. He gets up and introduces this place as a lag, a place where he can never get out. But all of these things don't matter as he needs to survive no matter what. He walks inside, and this time as well, he doesn't want to die like that. He enters a white space of some sort, and a very supernatural event was taking place just in front of him. He approaches a futuristic trash bin, and as he places his hand on it, he awakens, and unlike another awakening where you get powers from just being there, he gets a surge of energy flowing inside his body, rearranging everything in him. He opens his eyes, and in front of him were all the skills that he now possesses and could level up. Now the skills that he got were pretty normal, but what caught his attention was that he could get infinite passive skills. He sees this and realizes that this could be big, and this time he could get further and not die, but it seemed there was no guarantee that this would really be something that he could use right now. The system announces that it would now give him a weapon, and a small pickaxe appears in front of him. Although this was small, he was still satisfied with the length. He swings it and reflects that many times in the past, he got the most bizarre things as a weapon, ranging from condoms to plushy toys. He walks out of the building, and this time he was fully ready to go all out. He makes his way to a wall, which had two options to choose from. He chooses the second door and reminds himself that he died countless times in the first door and that the second door is better. He goes down some seriously dangerous stairs and approaches the gate. He casts a light spell and slowly makes his way inside. Opening the door to level 2, he had a grim face and knew just what type of things he needed to do to make it out alive. The hollow emptiness couldn't make him happier, and he reflects on how long it has been since he came here, and this time there was no turning back. He goes deeper, and at these levels, there was no light at all, and pitch black darkness surrounded him. He slowly and steadily walks in and notices that grinding noises started to come from the side. Hidden monsters began to smash their teeth together, creating an uncomfortable situation. As cracking sounds came, he cast his light spell, and in front of him were monsters with twisted bodies, and they were slowly approaching him. He was just a step away from death, and he thanked heaven for making their movements slow. They make their way closer to him, and in the next second, he readies his hand and reminds himself to wait. As their terrifying faces get closer, he didn't rush to attack and instead waited for them to come even more closer. Just as he was ready, a zombie quickly jumped near him, and it all of a sudden became faster than anything. Hayek immediately swings his pickaxe and stabs it in its brain. The force he did this with knocked the zombie on the other side, and the two other zombies also began to close their gap. He immediately readies himself again. The weakness of zombies is their head, and in past he had a terrible time finding out without any help. At first, they do look normal and slow, but their movements and reactions get very complex the moment they get ready to attack. And it was all just as he predicted. The zombies jump at him. He casts a flame spell, and he burns the two of them. As they were blinded by the fire, they didn't do anything and fell down immediately. Hayek purposely chose this stage since his skills and weapon both aligned with the situation here, plus his flame skill can be very useful. Now he knew the weakness of zombies, and with a grim face, he casually walks off, and each step was careful. A loud rumbling sound scares him for a second, and in front was a little goblin junior trying to attack him. Hayek freezes for a minute, but he knew that he could not be stopped here and immediately he strikes him with no overthinking. As he retrieves his weapon, it got stuck in its head and he pulls its whole head out. He reflects that he has never seen a monster this small. These encounters gave him some level-up chances, and he officially became the zombie slayer. The system awards him a passive skill, Tough Skin, as a reward, and a bright light appears and changes his body from the inside. The system also allowed him to finally move forward to other and deeper levels. Hayek now has 3 passive skills, which would definitely come in handy this time. He moves forward, and this time he was more than ready to do whatever he can to win and not die. He goes deeper, and this time he encounters 2 identical-looking doors. Now one of these doors was locked, so he entered the only door he could. He entered and immediately he could feel the cold air breezing through the room. He clenches his weapon and knew that he could not hesitate. He opened the last door, and in front of him was a man laying down, all defenseless. He himself knew that things are perhaps going too smoothly, but this encounter was about to turn into something unexpected. The man was snoozing, it seemed, and had no worry of anything. He wanted to kill him, but Kim woke up immediately and got up to defend himself. He begins to pant, and in that room, there were only 2 of them, and if things turned south, there would only be 1 survivor. He looks at his hammer, and was sure that he is waiting for the next stage as well. Kim began to stutter, and Hayek lets him just spew whatever he wants to, and he presses him and asks who he was waiting for. There were many wrong things with this situation, and Kim replies that he was waiting for him. This pissed Hayek a bit. Finally he has met the first liar in his journey. Kim began to shiver in fear and terror, sharing that his best friend died, and he could do nothing but run. With a cold voice, he asks if he had the balls to run here but couldn't help his comrade, and he averts his eyes and tells him that that is the case. He lets Hayek know that he was waiting for a partner so they could go together, and he ignores that stinky dude and bids him farewell. He tells him that he could do whatever he would like, and he shouts at him and proposes that he could tag with him and help him. He opens the door, and Kim's eyes widened to see a forest covered with a deadly mist. Considering the size, there was no movement in that forest, and the trees were towering over dozens of meters. There was no ceiling anywhere, so he figured that maybe this could not be fake or anything. But they began to walk inside the woods. Everything was just what a normal forest would have: grass growing from the ground, trees with proper structure. Hayek kept walking, and the annoying fly began to spew how this could be a trap and how they should be careful. His useless chatter really made Hayek completely ignore him, and he enters and lets him know that they should keep moving in order to achieve a higher probability of surviving through this. He continues and spewed on how there could be dangerous stuff, and he asks Kim if he thinks life is easy. He reminds him that he needs to gather himself and says that if he hates this, then he could go somewhere else, and in the first place, he never asked him to follow. Now this sentence just completely changed that trash, and for a minute he glares at Hayek with bloodlust eyes, and his personality changed. He became a more timid and shy person and immediately agreed with all his talks. He enters the forest. It was dark, gloomy, and scary. They kept looking around, but obviously there were some things that were not fine. Hayek looks up and notices that their real test is just about to start. Kim asks if he is fine and if there's any reason he is looking up, and when he saw the things lurking on the top of the trees, spiders with thick wooden skins screamed at them with a loud, eerie noise. The spider jumps from the trees, and as they both get ready to dodge, it lands down with a threatening atmosphere and sends both of them back. The sheer size of this monster was definitely something to fear, and Hayek noticed that Kim was ready to fight as well, and even more surprisingly, his movements were better. The spider glances at Hayek, and immediately he remembers how he used to get torn apart by its fangs. He reminds himself to never get caught, and a fierce fight ends up taking place. Hayek was confident in his speed and knew that there is no way he could mess this up. The spider began to use its legs, and Hayek effortlessly dodges everything, but this kept going on, and Kim was just on the other side, waiting for the results. He notices something, but Hayek was not there to wait for someone's help. He jumps and strikes one of its legs, but it only enraged the spider, and as he was about to attack again, from the back Kim dashed towards Hayek with fury-filled eyes. Hayek immediately glances back. Instead of attacking him, he casts a magic spell and tears the spider's leg. Hayek was surprised, and in the first place, there was no reason for him to intertwine. They both tag-team fight the spider, and Hayek began to use the crack on its leg and used them to sever its leg. Kim, on the other hand, used fire spell after fire spell, and after the spider slowed down a little, he jumped over it, and he landed perfectly where its brain would be, and in the next second, he began to smash down with all the strength he had left. Each strike weakened its shell and eventually killed it. As they won, he glances at Kim, all sweaty and barely catching his breath. It seemed like his power does a great toll on his body. Just seeing his face, he proposes that they should take a break for now. He walks off, and deep down Hayek doesn't even have an ounce of care if he lives or dies. He is there to use him to the fullest and then kill him. They walk and walk, but all around them was forest. Kim began to question if Hayek even knew where they were going, and he just kept shaking him off. He glances at him, and tells him to shut up and follow him. As he glances at him, he notices a rustling sound from the side, and when he checks, it was already too late, and dozens of wooden spiders had already surrounded the two of them. As they screamed, they were ready to jump and taste their blood, and Kim asks him if they would fight, but Hayek reminds him to run when things are out of control. They both ran for their lives while the spiders followed. It seemed like Hayek knew where to run, and he changed a few directions, and both were fast enough to evade the spiders. He ran, and eventually Hayek finally gets to the perfect location he was finding for, a dead end with absolutely no exit whatsoever. Kim furiously yelled at Hayek for dragging him to a place with no return, but immediately he shut his face down and reminds him to stay quiet. Now the way he said this was terrifying, and it seems like he himself was about to kill him. He quickly changed and began to be a normal, everyday neighbor. Hayek was here to use his trump card. He goes near a tree and calls out to Kim. Hayek casts a flame spell, and the tree began to burst in flames, and he points to the tree and tells Kim to shoot his explosive attack at the tree. Now at first he tried to spew his own theory, but after doing what he had told him to do, burned wood fell to the nearby places and the forest began to burn slowly. As they watched the forest turn red, and in a matter of minutes the fire spread through the forest. Kim kept saying the same stuff about running, and this time, he slaps him, and cries of spiders were heard from all over the places. Since their outer shell was made from wood, this was the perfect solution to fight against them. As Kim exclaimed, Hyak did the unthinkable and cleared a whole stage all by himself. And for this, he was awarded pretty generously. 94% of the loot was given to Hyak and 6% for Kim. Although he wanted to have all the points, Hyak figured that maybe these things could be for the best. Additionally, he was also awarded with some cool-looking boots which increase his moving speed by 5%. He throws his old slippers and wears them without any weight. He glances to his side and notices that Kim was perhaps starting to stare a little too hard. He asks him if there is something wrong, and he changes again and began to ask if the level is over. He walks off by telling him to adapt to the system. But something sinister was going on inside Kim's mind. They easily walked into the forest now, which had the bodies of spiders, and Hyak was very wary of Kim. Hyak was here to get the soul of the spider he killed, and as he looked around, he found it. A bluish ball of energy was circling around the body, and Hyak shares that these are set rewards for killing the monsters. These can help with leveling up and act as skill points. He reaches his hand out and absorbs the ball. These balls are also used for transactions for things, and in this world, these are a form of currency. Hyak needed one more to upgrade his bare hand-to-hand combat skill to level 2, and he glances back. Kim was trying his best to absorb one of the balls. He tried everything, but the ball was just floating there. He lets out a slight smirk and reflects that no one can absorb it. He approached near Kim, and he was struggling to capture it, but as soon as Hyak tried it, the ball vanished. The person who killed the monster gets to absorb the ball, and there is a time limit of 4 hours. During that time, no one can claim it, but after that the right to claim disappears. Now Kim was in disbelief, and Hyak looks at him and lets out a smirk. He leaves him laughing and Kim snapped, and rage boiled inside him. Hyak was sure to clear the second door, but from the back, Kim ran towards him and jumped at Hyak. That trash finally ended up revealing his true colors. I need to finish this trash was the only thing that circled around his head, and Kim already used his skill on the hammer, but the hammer didn't move an inch as Hyak immediately stabbed his throat using his pickaxe. It was so fast that he had no idea what was going on, but he started to spurt out blood from his mouth. Hyak looks at the piece of trash and asks how he thinks he knew about Kim being a low-life trash who backstabs. He points to him and tells him that he should have at least wiped the blood from his hammer when they first met. He pulls his axe out and reminds him that he is in his palm. But the words were not reaching that poor trash since blood was coming out from his ear, and he was just one step near death. He brings the pickaxe near his head and lets him know that he can't handle a piece of trash like him. He stabs the axe, and he drops dead from the blow to the head. As a soul came out of his body, he quickly absorbs it, and he had zero remorse from killing him. Rather, he knew that he was going to kill him from the start but was waiting for him to start. People like these hide their true intentions and disguise themselves as helpless and weak, but when it comes to their benefit, they can do anything, kill anyone at any given time. Back at the basement, there was blood on his hammer, and seeing it Hyak was sure that he betrayed his comrade earlier, and that this blood was not from any zombie. Earlier, when they killed the first spider, he also began to look for souls, and since zombies had no souls, there was no way he knew the concept of them. This all could point to the fact that he killed his partner, absorbed his soul, and moved on. He looks at his body, and thanks him for letting him have 3 souls. He reflects that the only reason he made it this far was because he knew people like him would do something like this. In the past, he was betrayed again and again, and thus he has developed a habit to kill anyone with suspicion. He grabs his hammer, and was ready to move to the next level. His hammer was pretty well made and gave him a slight boost of muscular strength. He reflected on how he looks like an engineer, but right now his main priority is to get a decent armor to protect himself from the surroundings. Leveling up is also very important, and he can't neglect things like this. He goes to the exit and opens the door. As he made his way inside, B2 is a place where players can rest for some time and collect themselves for the next event. This had everything that one could need, but there was something that he wanted from the room called lag. He opens the door, and inside, the atmosphere changed. A spirit was staring from its hiding spot while hiding its hand, and it had bright white eyes glaring at every action he did. This was the vendor of lag. These things just give creeps to Hyak. One time one of his partners tried to wave his hand at the vendor, but his arm was completely eaten by it, and that man cried from the pain. This is the sole thing that kept Hyak alive, learning from others' mistakes. Since the vendors are used to trade, he tells the ghost thing to show the equipment that he has. It brings out its arm, and in the next second, dozens of things appeared under its arm, and all of them were better than others. He tells it to show him armors, and within seconds, it showed him dozens of combinations. He points to the vendor and tells him to give him one. Immediately the ghost closes its arm and brings its hand near his face, and Hyak knew that the ghost is now asking for souls. He places 3 souls, and the ghost absorbs the souls and generates the armor he asked for. These were the best investment he could think of right now, and each item would help him get back from the dangers that lurked outside. The item fly over to Hyak, and immediately he wears everything, and Hyak was ready for the next journey. The ghost also brings its hand out and offers him some food and water, and this was the first time he had ever seen this. He goes outside and checks the food, and it was a luxury meat of a monster that he cannot dream of right now. He begins to eat it, and after drinking water, he stretches himself and was ready to leave. But before anything, he really wanted to take a shower, so he goes near the door of the shower. But when he was about to open the door, from the inside, someone was twisting the lock, and immediately he knew that someone was inside. He hides and brings out his weapon. He was ready to attack when a girl appears, and it seems like she was not very active other than to deflect him, and in the next second, we see her full figure. He was sure that he has come around anyone except Kim, and in lag, women are usually a helper, or just a partner who would drag the person down. He was here to see if this person is someone who would put his life in danger or not. She stretches her body and cried out how refreshing it is to shower. But all the bright mood disappears when Hyak points his pick right near her neck. He tells her in a cold voice to raise her hands, and she guiltily does that. He was so cold to her that he also placed the hammer near her head, and he tells her not to make a sound unless she wants a severed head. She begins to shiver and tells him that they can surely talk this through. He commands her to take out all her equipment and souls and put it all on the floor. She was shivering and does whatever she was told to do. He asks for the souls, but it seems like she had no soul on her, and she also tells him this. He was pressing her so much that she became a robot and followed everything he said to her. He asks where the others are, and she replies that there is no one with her. He kept asking her, and she cries out that there is no one with her. It seems like whatever she did, she was not talking or lying. He reflected that since she came out of the shower then there was really no one with her, and if there was someone, they would have at least guarded the place. He tells her to stand up, and as they walk inside another room, there was really no one hiding anywhere. He asks what happened, and she replies that she was with someone but he went into a different room. It seems like there were some room replacements going on with lag, and after hearing and confirming this, he knew that lag was changing. He asks her one last time, and asks why she didn't go with that man, and with a cracking and shaking voice she lets him know that he was a pervert who sniffed her shoes and she didn't want to go with him. Now Hyak was wondering if he should end her or send her somewhere else, and as the girl asks for him, he lets her know that he is still thinking to either kill her or spare her. She began to answer his question about her being useful in fighting, and she began to list literally everything about her, from her sexiness, intelligence, and cuteness. He interrupts her, and he gives her a positive call and tells her that they could move together. Deep down, Hyak was ready to end her, but he was ready to wait and kill later, since she could prove to be useful. She asks if she could turn around, and when she does, her eyes widen, and she blushes. She tells him that she had thought that he was a pervert, or a middle-aged man, but being him as a handsome man, she lets him know that he is better than she had thought. He asks if she could afford to sweet-mouth him, and as they both interacted, she grabs her equipment, and glances at him, and shares that she is glad to see that he is a better person than she had thought. He glances at her, and was sure that she survived this long because of her manner of speaking. As she introduces herself, they were ready to go to the next level. As they approached the door of B3, they joked a little. She opens the door, and Hyuk pushes her inside, and their journey to hell was just about to start.